Hello, growers. Say goodbye to heavy sandbags and hello to modern growers' quick hoops low tunnels. Protect your plants from pests, wind, rain, and frost without the hassle of sandbags or flimsy hoops. Our patented design eliminates the need for clamps and ropes, while the unique wire system keeps covers secure yet easily accessible. Tested in the strong winds of New Zealand for over 20 years, quick hoops are light, strong, portable, and versatile. Most importantly, they're designed for field use. These aren't some lightweight system that only looks great in a greenhouse. Our hoops are designed to last in harsh field conditions. Use them with any covering to grow year-round and safeguard your crops. Shade cloth, frost blanket, insect net, clear poly, no problem. Quick Hoops can handle them. Get Quick Hoops today at shop.moderngrower.co and protect your crops for years to come.
One thing I want to start on today was carbon sequestration. How do you view carbon sequestration when it comes to soil?
So yes, carbon sequestration is a pretty hot topic, and it's covered in the media extensively, and we should ask why. Why is it that? I would say a soil with no carbon is like a body with no soul. It's just basically the life of the soil. And the goal is to sequester carbon, which meaning, taking it from the atmosphere through the process of photosynthesis. As you know, we convert the energy from the sun into carbon, and carbon is sequestered by the plants and is accumulated in the soil in two ways. One is by having roots growing in the soil. That's organic compounds, organic materials. They stay in the soil. And at the end of the growing cycle, when you have anything that we call, stover residues, you obviously want to keep them in the ground because that's carbon that was sequestered from the atmosphere. And so carbon is sequestered by accumulating carbon, by putting carbon in the soil. Carbon is not generated automatically. It's actually lost from the soil as a process of microbial decomposition. So if that provides a general, ground for you to understand, carbon is critical because it has so many positive aspects. And so I'll leave it there for now. That again, the goal is trying to keep as much carbon in the soil, because think of carbon as a health sorts of check. If you have carbon in the soil, you're more on the healthy side. If you have less carbon in the soil, you may be running into potential problem. Obviously, depends on the type of systems and the type of management that you do. You can certainly compensate a lot of the negativity of not having carbon through management. So if carbon, as we may continue in this conversation on carbon, it helps retaining water. And what could it be if you don't have carbon? You irrigate. But you may not be able to do that. There is cost involved, and there is energy involved, and there is a strong component. So if that helps, that's generally my view. You do want to sequester as much carbon as possible. And because you control partially the way the plants grow through the management, you want to accumulate the roots, but the critical piece is adding carbon to the soil in many different ways.
Do you have a sense in a natural system, say a healthy ecosystem that is just out there, a meadow, a prairie, a forest, is there an average net gain or loss in carbon to the soil? So plants are using carbon out of the atmosphere, and they're putting some of that into the soil. The microbes are respiring it. They're putting out oxygen. The plants are putting out oxygen in the process. At the end of the day, if you put that system in a vacuum, does it balance itself out where if one unit of carbon comes out of the atmosphere, one ends up in the soil?
Yes, very, very good question. I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible. Imagine the prairies, imagine virgin land with vegetation, like you said, that's has already at a level of carbon that as a mineral soils may be at saturation. So is in balance. Whatever, through the winter plants die, they grow back. they sequester as much as is lost if they are at saturation. Saturation means roughly about 5% of the soil organic carbon that can be stored. So prairies don't ever go to 15, 20%, 30%. That's a very difficult. Sometimes I even hear, oh, my soil organic carbon is going to 20%. That's a little bit different. You have an organic matter compound, but we're talking about soil carbon that remains in the soil that brings all the positive aspects. Now, if you are not at saturation, see it as a bucket. If you see that and you tilled, you basically have done something to that land, imagine that land as a jar. If you open that jar, there it goes, a big flush of CO2, carbon dioxide, as a result of this respiration from microbes that goes into the atmosphere. So if the bucket now is just basically you lost, imagine drinking out of a bucket, you lower. Now you have a gap, and that could be regained. So in the accumulation now of doing photosynthesis and basically accumulating roots, and now you slowly building back up because you have a room for it. The problem in the managed system, you keep bringing it down. You keep drinking out of this bucket that you really have little left, but much greater potential to accumulate. The problem is, what do? We put some, we take up. We take as much or more. And so it's this continuous fluctuation. And that's why I needed to start for you to understand that the example that you started with starts possibly at a saturation, that not much more can be gained. But in general, yes, it can be sequestered compared to the amount of what is lost through respiration. And how can it be? By don't touch it. Don't touch the soil. If you touch the soil, you break the aggregates. And what happens if you break the aggregate? You basically open the jar. You basically open that aggregate of soil that is exposed to soil microbes. That they made out of carbon, they eat carbon, and they expel carbon. That's basically what they are. And so this in form of CO2 gets released into the atmosphere. What we accumulate through virtual, good practices like no tillage or cover crop, it really depends on where you are in the level of degradation. If you have room to accumulate, you should do so and maintain it. Unfortunately, as soon as you break this virtuous cycle and you till or you remove, basically you don't continue doing that, then you start basically dipping in, almost seeing as a bank account. You accumulate, but if you keep drawing out more than you put in, then you start losing. So I don't know if I was clear, but it's again, the complexity stays on where are you at in terms of your potential? Can you sequester it? And are you keeping it for a long time? Because this accumulation, we're talking, I don't necessarily want to give you numbers that people may not relate, but a cover crop could sequester, basically, 1 ton of carbon. And depending on the volume and the bulk density of the soil and where you start, it will make a very little then. It'll be like 1.01 now, and it keeps slowly. So it takes long time to accumulate carbon. And at some point in the conversation, Diego, I think we should address why it's important. We said that obviously, yes, it is the life, but it has so many positive aspects in addition to the climate benefits. The climate benefit meaning of, we're all aware of CO2 being much and a greater concentration than before. Simply put, that we have, how many more cars do we have compared to 50 years ago? That's petrol that was in the bowel of the earth. There was carbon in the bowel of the earth, and now we put it into the atmosphere. So that remains the strongest sector. But agriculture plays a role, and I see it as a solution rather than the problem. Even though we do contribute roughly in the range that ranges that between 12, 14 or so, 15% of the anthropogenic CO2 is emitted comes from agriculture, and the majority of that comes from N2O. We probably will get there in the conversation about abatement, but let me just add the positive aspect to that. If you retain carbon, because carbon creates a glue, like a physical glue, that the aggregates are glued together. When water goes in that, it retains, it stays there much longer. The microbes basically can't go in, but the roots can slowly and be able to use this water when it's needed. So first benefit, a greater capacity of holding water for longer time. And that's critical because it helps stabilize yields, especially in an environment where water may be, more limiting. As this is the carbon of microbes, they still decompose, there is a release of nutrients that is also, very important in terms of adjusting the possible management that you will add on with fertilizer, which could be less if you have higher organic matter and the decomposition allows the release of nitrogen.
Today's episode is brought to you by Modern Grower. Modern Grower is your source for time and labor-saving farm tools, such as the PaperPot Transplanter, Quick Click Seeder, and the Jang Direct Seeder. Turn laborsome tasks into free time with tools by Modern Grower.